What's up, Falcons Nation? It's your boy Jew coming at you with another Atlanta Falcons video. As always, Falcons Nation, rise up. It is another Falcons Friday. So shout out to all of you guys for viewing the channel. I appreciate all my subscribers and those who have liked, who has shared this video out to your Falcons groups and your friends and family. I hope all of you guys had a wonderful Christmas holiday. I hope you were safe, and I hope you got the presents that you were looking for. My wife, shout out to her for giving me this nice bucket hat that we wear usually during the training camp. Roddy White wore these hats on the sideline for many years. So shout out to her for getting me this nice little training camp bucket hat. I really love the hat. She also got me a nice plush Falcons house robe. So big ups to the wifey for getting me all of the nice Falcons gear. But let's jump right into the video. We're going to talk a little bit about our keys to victory, as we always do. We're also going to talk about a lot of breaking news that took place as far as Dan Quinn coming back as the head coach in 2020, Thomas Dimitroff coming back as the GM in 2020, and also we're going to go ahead and talk about Raheem Morris being the defensive coordinator in 2020 for the team. All of that being established today. So let's jump right into the video. That was the first thing I woke up to, the news that I woke up to. Dan Quinn, Thomas Dimitroff, those guys coming back as the head coach, of Raheem Morris being a defensive coordinator, which was excellent. Excellent news to me, music to my ears. I've been saying this since the beginning of the season, if you remember. I'm gonna go ahead and take this off, y'all, because it's kind of tight on my head. So that was one of the things that I talked about early in the season, that I wanted to bring Dan Quinn back. I feel like Dan Quinn is an excellent leader, excellent coach, head coach, definitely a leader of men, excellent motivator, and that he's building a winning culture here in Atlanta. He's definitely bringing a winning culture to the team, and that brotherhood, it runs strong with the players. All of the players have been singing his praises. Julio Jones early in the season, when we were on that losing streak, said in the locker room that it wasn't on the head coach, that players weren't going out and they weren't executing. Matt Ryan came out recently when he was talking to the NFL Network, stating that Dan Quinn is one of the best coaches out there after they beat the 49ers. He was talking about how they all love Dan Quinn and they were fighting for his job. Devontae Freeman was another one that they interviewed in the locker room after the Jaguars game, and basically stated the same thing, that all the players love Dan Quinn and thinks that he's an excellent head coach and that he definitely is the man for the job. So shout out to Arthur Blank, shout out to Rich McKay for those guys going in and making the right decision. I feel like it was the right decision. We're going to see if it's the right decision in 2020, but I really believe that we're building something special here, and we're building a winning culture here as the Atlanta Falcons organization. So let's jump right into the reasons I feel like Dan Quinn is keeping his job, or what helped save his job. First things first, Dan Quinn made the proper adjustments. If you remember early in the season, Dan Quinn was the head coach. Dan Quinn was a defensive lines coach, and Dan Quinn was also the defensive coordinator. So he had a three-prong approach. He was head coach, defensive coordinator, and defensive line coach. And I think he really looked himself in the mirror at the bye week and said, this is not working. I'm being stretched too thin. I cannot be the defensive coordinator calling all the plays, running the defensive lines, or trying to be the defensive lines coach and be the head coach and try to manage clock management and challenges and timeouts and all of that. He realized that he made a mistake, and he corrected the mistake by moving his assistant coaches and allocating all of that work and some of that work off to his assistant coaches, the assistant coaches that he trusted the most. Raheem Morris took over defensive play calls and also moved from the wide receivers coach to the secondary coach. And then Jeff Albrecht, who's the linebackers coach, also started to call some plays on the defensive side of the ball as a defensive coordinator. And I believe those were the correct moves. Since the 7-game stretch since the bye, the team is 5-2. He also made a key decision, and I don't know if this was Dan Quinn or Thomas Dimitroff, but they both may have collaborated on the decision that they needed to move on from Matt Bryant because he was missing too many field goals and PATs. They brung in Younghoe Koo, who has won 2 special teams player of the weeks in this 7-game stretch. He's been excellent in doing onside kicks, and he also had a fumble recovery on a kickoff return. So that was also the correct move. So it looks like those guys has pressed all of the correct buttons in the second half of the season. I seen some statistics of how well the defense have played. If you remember, prior to the bye week, the team only had 7 sacks on the year. We now sit at 27 sacks on the year. So in this last 7-game stretch, our team has 20 sacks, which is big. Vic Beasley going into the bye week had 1.5 sacks. He now has 8 sacks. So he's had 7 sacks in the last 7 games, meaning he's had at least a sack every single game this last the second half of the season, which is big. So all of these guys are trending in the right direction, and I believe that was the reason that Dan Quinn was able or being brought back. Also, another key stat that I seen when I was on AtlantaFalcons.com, you need to go and read the article that's there. It's really a good article. It showed how much points was being averaged against us. It said 31. We were allowing 31 points a game prior to the bye week. Now we're averaging, teams are averaging 18 points against us per game in the second half of the season, which is 7th in the league. Where previously, when we were at 31, allowing the 31 points a game, we were the 31st ranked defense in the league for our scoring defense. So we have jumped and grown leaps and bounds. We basically cut that 31 points a game in half, down to, or about half, down to 18 points a game, which is huge. And if you want to say, well, we haven't played anyone down the stretch, that would be a myth as well, because we beat the San Francisco 49ers, who is one of the top scoring teams in the league. We also beat the New Orleans Saints. Both of those games were on the road that we upset those teams. And we basically, those basically are 2 of the highest scoring teams in the league right now. So it's a myth to believe that we only have played garbage teams down the stretch. And if you be honest, when we played the Carolina Panthers in that the first time in Carolina, they were still in the playoff hunt at that time, and they was one of the teams that were playing well at the time. So we have won some key games down the stretch, and we've looked good doing it. We beat some key teams down the stretch, and we've looked good doing it. So that's pretty much why I believe that Dan Quinn kept his job, and I believe that, like I said, it was the correct move. I feel like a lot of people are glossing over the Super Bowl run that Dan Quinn had, and they're also glossing over right after we lost the Super Bowl. I remember the media was saying that the Falcons were going to have a Super Bowl hangover, that we weren't going to be able to muster up enough energy to get back to the playoffs after that 28-3 blown lead. They were talking about how players were going to pack it in, and it wouldn't be a way for them to overcome that mental block of losing that Super Bowl. In the next season, Dan Quinn was able to lead this team to a 10-6 record, and we won a playoff game in a wild card against the Rams on the road. And we were able to do that without Kyle Shanahan. We were able to do that with a first-time NFL offensive coordinator and Steve Sarkisian. And the team still were able to band together. And this is what I talk about, that winning culture. We were still able to band together. That brotherhood was able to band together and muster up enough energy to get back to the playoffs. And we played well in the playoffs. We beat the Rams in the playoffs in that wild card game by a convincing margin. And then in that second game, we went to Philadelphia to face the Philadelphia Eagles, who were actually the champions that year in 2017, the Super Bowl champions. And we almost beat them on their field on the road as well. They end up winning the game. At the end of the game, the ball went through Julio Jones' hand in the corner of the end zone. But if he would have came down with that football, we would have been in back-to-back NFC championship games. So the myth that Dan Quinn isn't a good head coach, and the myth that Dan Quinn time has ran out as the Atlanta Falcons head coach, is just a myth. It's all lies. It's all myths. The media, I feel like, is the main reason why Dan Quinn was even on the hot seat to begin with. Don't get me wrong. Starting off 1-7 is bad, and he did have to own that. But I feel like I really don't even count last year against Dan Quinn. A lot of people want to say that Dan Quinn had back-to-back losing seasons, which it would be facts. But if we be honest with ourselves, leading that team to a 7-9 record last year was a huge accomplishment by how many injuries we had and how many players we had on IR last year. It was ridiculous. We were not only hurt, not only did we have injuries to just any players, we had injuries to our most explosive and key players on defense. Grady Jarrett was injured for a portion of the year. Deion Jones was injured most of the season. Ricardo Allen missed pretty much the whole season. Keanu O'Neal missed the whole season. So I really don't know any team that would have been able to survive that many injuries and and be able to make the playoffs and make a playoff run with those many guys on IR. Devontae Freeman was injured. It was just a multitude of injuries. Everybody pretty much on the offensive line was injured in 2018. So it's like, I believe that all of those people that were coming for Dan Quinn and saying that he had, it was a bad season last year, I consider it maybe an average season because of the amount of injuries we had. But I feel like it was a successful season for the team to even put out that type of effort to go 7-9 with that many injuries, that many players on IR. It was just ridiculous how many guys were actually hurt for the season. And then this season, we also battled a ton of injuries as well. Keanu O'Neal went down again. Calvin Ridley now is out for the season. Early in the season, our new draft pick, Chris Lindstrom, who was supposed to solidify the line with Caleb McGarry, he was hurt and broke his foot in the first game against Minnesota, which also hurt his team. Hurt our team really bad. Then Desmond Trufant was injured majority of the season. He was in and out. He got injured in the beginning of the season. Then he played part of the middle of the season, and then now he's out again with a broken forearm. So it was just so many injuries, so many young players in that secondary, with Isaiah Oliver being a first-time starter, with Kendall Sheffield being a rookie playing outside. Demonte Casey, he actually was playing the nickel position for the first time this season, and then eventually during the bye week they decided to move him back to free safety because he was struggling and he wasn't playing well at that position. And we also needed someone to fill the strong safety role with Keanu O'Neal going down, which they moved Rico Allen over. So it was just a ton of moving parts, and I think that fans take that for granted as well, that it's not easy to change positions. It's not easy for rookies, especially the secondary. Cornerback is probably the hardest position other than quarterback. Cornerback is probably, or defensive back is probably one of the hardest positions to play in the NFL based off of how the rules are nowadays. As far as illegal contact, it's hard to even play that position as a veteran, let alone a first-time starter. And we basically have 3 to 4 guys back there on that secondary and the back end at the DB position that's super young. Jordan Miller, he hadn't even gotten any snaps really, but when he was playing, he's a first-time player. He's a rookie. Kendall Sheffield's first-time, rookie playing in the NFL. And then, like I said, Isaiah Oliver was here last year, but he didn't get a ton of playing time, so he was a first-time starter. So we were just like really, 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 really young in that secondary. In the secondary, which really, really cost us early in the season. So with that being said, I do feel like the correct moves were made. I'm glad that Arthur Blank made the decision that he made to bring Dan Quinn back. I really think that it's going to pay dividends. If you want an early estimate about how many games I think we win next season, if we can keep Vic Beasley and we keep this core group of guys intact, meaning we bring back Austin Hooper and we do the necessary things, I really think that at worst, this team is going 10-6, 11-5 next year at worst. I really could see this team winning a maximum of 11 to 12 games next year. And I'm being serious when I say that. That y'all can hold me to it next season once the season is complete. But I really think that next year the team will at least win 10 or 11 games with the most games won, maybe 12-4 next year. But I'm thinking more 11-5, 10-6. But if we want to win our division, I'm thinking maybe 11-5 or 12-4. I really could see the Atlanta Falcons pulling that off because Tampa Bay is still kind of rebuilding their squad. The Saints, who knows if Drew Brees is actually coming back next season, and they have a lot of cap issues as well. And then the Panthers, who knows what they're doing. They probably will be at the bottom of the division next year, because who knows if Cam Newton's coming back healthy. Who knows who's going to be their head coach now that they let go of Ron Rivera. So it's probably going to take them years to get back on the winning track, because they probably will clean house and get rid of a lot of players. So it's going to be really, really tough for those guys. But with that being said, that's pretty much all I wanted to say about Thomas Dimitroff, Dan Quinn, about them coming back. I really think that was the right move by Rich McKay and by Arthur Blank. I appreciate him sticking with his guns, and I love what he said. You definitely got to go back and watch Rich McKay and Arthur Blank's interview. I did go ahead and check out their interview that was done on AtlantaFalcons.com, and I love something that Rich McKay said that I want to share with you guys. On my video, he talked about they were talking about the fans being disappointed, and he said what we don't want to do is just get rid of a coach because of season ticket holders. He said we want to build a winning culture, build a winning franchise. We want to build a winning team, but we don't want to make moves off of ticket sales. And that was one of the smartest things I heard him say during that interview was, we're not going to move just because of, or be moved by what fans say, or by season ticket holders, because we know if we bring in a new head coach, say that the Atlanta Falcons decided that they were going to let go of Dan Quinn and they were going to bring in a new head coach. If the new head coach next season started off 1-7 like Dan Quinn, or started off with a losing record in the first 8 games or first couple games, the first thing that the Atlanta Falcons fan base will be saying is, we need to fire and get a new head coach. Even if it was a brand new guy. If we bring in a college head coach, or if we bring in Ron Rivera, or we bring in one of these retread guys, or Mike McCarthy, if they would start the season off next year 1-7 like Dan Quinn, the first thing Falcons fans would be saying is, we need to get another head coach. Even though that coach just started, we will be saying, we need to get a new head coach. And if you say that I'm lying, tell me you don't remember when Kyle Shanahan was a first-year offensive coordinator in 2015. 90% of Atlanta Falcons fans were saying, we need to get rid of Kyle Shanahan. He doesn't know what he's doing, because we were losing games. So if you think I'm lying, go back, think back to 2015 when Kyle Shanahan first got here, and go back and watch all of the debate shows. Go back and watch some of the content creators, because I wasn't actually creating Atlanta Falcons content on YouTube back then. But I know I was one of the guys saying, man, Kyle Shanahan doesn't know what he's doing. We might need to move on and get a new offensive coordinator. Just for 2016, him to come back and help lead the team to a Super Bowl as an offensive coordinator. So we know as Atlanta Falcons fans, a lot of you guys are really fickle, and we know that you're not patient. The biggest problem I see with our Atlanta Falcons fans in general is that we want immediate success. We want the microwave quick, transition quick, wins quick, Super Bowl. But it's not going to happen that way. The way that you win games and the way that you build a winning culture and to build a winning franchise is to slowly, brick by brick, build a solid foundation. If you don't build a solid foundation, your house can't stand. And that's the biggest thing I see with our Atlanta Falcons fans. We're very fickle. We want the immediate fix. And there's no immediate fix other than sticking with what we have. It's, if we bring in a new head coach, or if we brought in a new head coach in this offseason, we're not going to the Super Bowl the next season. That's just not realistic, because another big thing that we're not realizing is a lot of these players that just got contract extensions are Dan Quinn draft picks, or Dan Quinn guys that he built on this defense, like a Grady Jarrett, a Deion Jones. And when you bring in a new head coach and a new GM, sometimes they clean house because they want to bring in their type of philosophy and the type of players that play their philosophy, or play the way they want them to play. And these guys that we've built this team around, the core guys on this team, are players that were drafted while Dan Quinn has been here. And they were built to play Dan Quinn's scheme. So if you bring in a new head coach, you bring in a new GM, 9 times out of 10, they're going to want to clean house and bring in new players that can play their particular scheme and play the way that they want them to play. So with that being said, that's it as far as my Dan Quinn rant and my Thomas Dimitroff rant. Let's go ahead and jump right into, really quick, I'm going to talk about Raheem Morris, and then we're going to jump right into the keys to victory for this game against Tampa on Sunday. So the Raheem Morris, being named the defensive coordinator, I love this move as well. I wouldn't have mind Jeff Ulbrich or Raheem Morris being the defensive coordinator because both of those guys are excellent defensive minds. Jeff Ulbrich is a former linebacker who played with the San Francisco 49ers for many years. So he's an excellent defensive mind. I wouldn't mind him being the defensive coordinator as well. But I love Raheem Morris being the defensive coordinator because he's another great motivator, great communicator as a coach. I've seen the growth in Isaiah Oliver, Kendall Sheffield, Bleedy Ray Wilson, all of those guys. DeMonte KZ, Rico. I've seen a huge jump in those guys since he's took over that defensive room in that secondary and him calling plays. Those guys have definitely played better. So big ups to Raheem Morris. As I told you, he cut his teeth in this league as a defensive coach. He was a secondary coach for the Buccaneers for many years. He was one of the coach that helped groom Aqib Talib, who was one of the better corners in the NFL. He was there when the Buccaneers first drafted him, and he was one of the coaches that helped mold Aqib Talib into being the cornerback that he is today, or the defensive back he is today. He also coached the Tampa Bay Buccaneers for a couple seasons. He was a very young head coach, but he did a pretty good job as the coach there in Tampa. And I believe that the correct move was made to make him the defensive coordinator. Like I said, he's a great motivator, a great leader. I just hope that one of these head coaching jobs doesn't come open and they try to get Raheem Morris, because I really feel like Raheem Morris, in a couple of seasons, if not this offseason, is going to start receiving head coaching interviews. I really think he's going to start getting interviews just like Kyle Shanahan started getting interviews the year we went to the Super Bowl. I really think that Raheem Morris and Jeff Ulbrich are going to have some opportunities to be head coaches, and I hope that they decide to stick with our Atlanta Falcons. But like you said, I love the move with Raheem Morris moving over. I think he's, like I said, an excellent leader of men, an excellent communicator with the young guys. He can relate to the young guys, and he does a great job of being that player's coach that they need, teaching technique to young players. He's great at teaching defensive back techniques, and it's been proven in the multitude of players that he's coached. Aqib Talib was just one of the guys that I wanted to use that I know he coached in the past. But with that being said, let's go ahead and jump right into the keys to victory in this game against Tampa and talk about the Tampa Bay Buccaneers a little bit. As you know, Jameis Winston is the quarterback for Tampa Bay. He's thrown 28 interceptions this year and I think like 38 touchdowns or something like that. So one thing that we definitely have to be prepared for in this game is for him to be slinging the ball all across the yard. Bruce Arians loves to run an offense where they're airing the ball out or airing it out. If you watched the game last week against the Texans, I think it was on Saturday, they were throwing the ball all over the place. So definitely look for those guys to be airing the ball out. One good thing, I hate injuries, but one good thing for our Atlanta Falcons is we won't have to worry about one of their weapons in Mike Evans, who's definitely a top receiver in this league, tall, fast. We won't have to worry about him because he's on IR at this point. But we will have to worry about Chris Godwin. We must be ready for his speed and him making deep plays down the field. He did have a couple touchdowns and over 100 yards receiving in that first matchup in Atlanta. So he is the X factor for their team. He is public enemy number one in those wide receivers. Him and Cameron Brate, O.J. Howard, another tight end that they have, him and Brate do a good job of running up the seams. So KZ, this is going to be a big game for the back end of our defense. They're going to really be tested in this game, and we're going to see how much they've grown. Like I was just talking about, Isaiah Oliver, Kendall Sheffield, Bleedy Ray Wilson, Rico Allen, KZ, all of those guys are going to be tested in coverage this week, and they are the key on our defense. They must be ready for this game on defense. Now, as far as the defense for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, they have the sacks leader with Shaquille Barrett. I believe he has somewhere around 15 sacks, I think, on the season. 15, 16, 17, somewhere around there sacks this year. But I know he's leading the NFL in sacks. So we definitely had to be prepared for him. Ndamukong Suh in the middle of that defense and Vita Vea. Those guys like to clog up the middle and bring pressure right up in the middle in Matt Ryan's lap. So we got to be ready for those guys. And we got to be ready for those edge rushers that can be bringing pressure, ghosting, and then those linebackers blitzing up the gut. They did a lot of A-gap blitzing in the first matchup. Chris Lindstrom wasn't playing during the first matchup, so I do think that that's going to play a huge role. And Austin Hooper didn't play in that first matchup. So I feel like that's going to play a big deal in this game, and those could be X factors for our Atlanta Falcons to stopping those guys. They are very young in their secondary, so I think they can be had on pass plays. And we see that Julio Jones and Matt Ryan right now are on fire, and I really think that that spells trouble for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. But let's go ahead and talk about our Atlanta Falcons keys to victory. First key to victory for Atlanta Falcons, as I said, the defensive backs in the secondary. This is a big game for you guys. We need you to pick off about 2 passes, which I think is very possible because Tampa Bay throws the ball 40 times plus every single game. They don't stick with the run at all. They don't try to establish the run at all. They will be looking to throw the ball around the yard and put up points. So we have to be ready to keep the safeties over the top. Don't do a ton of blitzing. Be ready to undercut routes and be ready for players to go deep down the field. No holding, no pass interference because they will be airing the ball out. They have another guy in the slot named Scotty Miller who has a lot of speed as well. So we have to be ready for those guys to try to throw the ball and air the ball out against us. So the number one key to victory is the secondary must ball out. The secondary must play sound football. No explosive plays. And if they catch a couple of explosive plays, no explosive plays for touchdowns. No missed tackles in the middle of the field. No missed tackles at all in this game. Key to victory number 2, protect Matt Ryan. If you protect Matt Ryan in this game, Matt Ryan will carve their defense up as he's been carving up teams all season. He's thrown for another 4,000 yards this year. Matt Ryan's just a walking consistency. He's consistent every season with putting up those 4,000 passing yards. Him and Julio Jones, like I said, I expect those guys to have a big game. Austin Hooper, I expect those guys to ball out. Russell Gage is doing a great job in the slot in developing. He's doing great for us at that slot position now that we've lost Mohamed Sanu, who was traded. And now that Calvin Ridley's out, we're counting a lot on Russell Gage to make plays, and I expect him to make plays in this game as well. But like I said, number 2 will be protecting Matt Ryan. Chris Lindstrom, Caleb McGarry, Alex Mack, all of those guys up front. Wes Schweitzer, no holding penalties this game. Do a good job of creating holes in the running game and giving Matt Ryan time to step up in the pocket. So we're really going to count a lot on Chris Lindstrom, Alex Mack, and Wes Schweitzer. Those are the key guys on the line that must keep pressure from coming down the pipe, down the middle at Matt Ryan, so he can step up in the pocket and throw the ball down the field, because there will be plays to be made because this secondary is very young and they can be exposed. Key to victory number 2 will be staying balanced on offense. We must run the ball, continue to run the ball with Devontae Freeman, who broke out last game with 2 touchdowns. Run the ball with Brian Hill and run the ball with Quadra Olson in those short yardage downs and on the goal line. We must be able to establish the run in this game. Keep the defensive line of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers from pinning their ears back and getting after Matt Ryan. But if we can run the ball, we can keep those guys off balance and keep those guys from pinning their ears back and coming for our quarterback. Key to victory number 4 will be getting pressure on Jameis Winston. If we pressure Jameis Winston with our defensive line, I'm expecting Vic Beasley to have another sack in this game. Hopefully he gets 2 sacks so he can get to that 10-sack mark, because I do want to see Vic Beasley get paid this offseason. I think with Thomas Dimitroff and Dan Quinn coming back kind of solidifies Vic Beasley getting paid and coming back, if not on a long-term deal, at least on a 2 to 3 year deal. But I do think that Vic Beasley is worthy of being paid. He's had a pretty good season the second half of this season, and I think that if he gets to 10 sacks, I could definitely see him getting paid. But even if he doesn't get to that 10-sack mark, I really could see us bringing him back on a short deal, maybe 2 to 3 years, where he can keep proving how good of a player he is. But we need everybody on the defensive line. Now that Pat McKinley's out, we're going to need Adrian Claiborne to step up. We're going to need Jack Crawford. Grady Jarrett has been a one-man wrecking crew, or really it's been two people. It's been Vic Beasley and Grady Jarrett, but Grady Jarrett's been a one-man wrecking crew all season. Of course, he did make the Pro Bowl this year, so I'm expecting big things out of him. It's going to be a big game for our linebackers. I do think that Deion Jones or Devondre Campbell, could have an interception in this game. If we can get pressure, Jameis Winston will throw the ball to us because he is a turnover machine. And if we can get 2 picks in this game, he'll be like one of the first quarterbacks, I think, to ever throw 30 interceptions in a season. So he's definitely capable of throwing interceptions, but he's also capable of throwing touchdowns, and he can catch fire. So we definitely have to be careful. We have to be very cautious, and we have to be aggressive of coming after him. If you get pressure on Jameis Winston, he'll throw the ball throw the ball to you. He'll throw the ball to the other team. So with that being said, that's pretty much my keys to victory for this game. I do think that we will defeat Tampa big this Sunday. I think that they'll have some late touchdowns, some garbage time touchdowns, but I can't see us winning this game by at least a touchdown or 2. So big ups to all you guys who checked out the channel, viewed the channel. That's the keys to victory for this game, the last game of the season. Y'all enjoy the game. Enjoy the weekend. Please like, please share, please subscribe. Shout out to all of you guys that are still the content creators that are still making videos, even though we're not in the playoffs. Like I said, I appreciate every single subscriber. Let's make this the biggest Falcons channel that there is. Like I said, for the best Atlanta Falcons content, tell your friends to come out and check out your boy. But this has been your boy Jew. I'll holler at y'all in the next video. Probably be on Monday, which we'll talk about a recap of the season, and we'll also talk about the post-game show about the game that will take place on Sunday. But this has been your boy Jew. I'll holler at y'all in the next video. Holler at y'all. Peace.